because the Bible tells us that he owns everything. So now you're talking about peace. You have peace when you don't own it. You're only the steward of what God has given you. And that's kind of and that is where we are today. And that's why I make less than I made 25 years ago, because it's not mine. Now, I could if I wanted to. I don't need more stuff to make me happy. I'm more satisfied with telling more people about the person that loves them and died for them.
And she said that every time they leave home, he grabs 5 pennies from his little piggy bank because he might want to give them to somebody.
That is so
as
sweet.
He goes. Like a 4-year-old is intentional about who I might give my money away today. Who am I going to want to give it to? And I'm like, I have never had the thought leaving my house. Like, I've got $20 in my purse today. God, who am I giving this to? And that being like every time I leave my house, I'm thinking, who am I giving to?
You know, I think at one time the Lord just said, I'm putting these people in your charge. So that's very, very important that they're taken care of the way they ought to be taken care of based on the responsibilities and those in that matter. So I think that's one of the responsibilities that we have is to take care of those that have really gotten us and brought us to where we are. So I want us to be and our people to be intentional about their family. So that is very important. I think at one time the Lord just said, I'm putting these people in your charge. So that's very, very important that they're taken care of the way they ought to be taken care of. So I think that's one of the responsibilities that we have.
What's up, patrons who are watching, and welcome Seacoast listeners. We just had, we're here with Bree McLeod, Lynn Stroy, Tamilix Copeland, Joey Svendsen. If you're listening for the first time, that's me. We just had an intense conversation about corn.
Corn
is amazing.
Not the band.
You're right.
I forgot about that.
That's good.
That's your brother's doing, right? You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't have known.
So I just made a very casual comment on how I think corn is a neutral food. I don't love it, but I don't dislike it. And then Bree said how it makes you angry.
I hate it.
So we'll have to have a corn episode. We can't rehash this right now.
Let me know.
Tamilix took
corn
offense.
in,
Oh.
and we will let you try it live.
That's where we ended things, you and me. I'm open. I'm open to trying it.
I'm open to
you
you
go.
cooking
Your
up some
version.
corn.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
think it needs some things with it, like some ribs.
Ooh.
Scam artist. But that was good.
like your style, girl.
It's like I'm rubbing off on you. I'm so proud of you right now.
I want a whole spread.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is hilarious. Before y'all got here, I told Tamilix, and I don't even know if you know any context. I said the Hobby Lobby intro, and this dude lit up like a kid in a candy store.
I love Hobby
You
Lobby.
do?
I do. I be scaring all the little old ladies when I go in there.
He says he'll walk around and like ask where certain things are, and they think he's kidding.
Yeah. I'll be like, can you show me where the art pencils are? Because I need a shade 17 green with a tint level of 4. And they're like,
T.
why are you here? Like, you're not in the right spot. I'm like, no, I'm in the right spot.
Okay, tell me this. You park, you walk inside, solo trip, it's just you.
I only go to there by myself because my wife would drive me crazy.
Perfect. Where are you going first? You're beelining where?
Which is hilarious. If I were to have seen him in Hobby Lobby, I'd be like, where's your family?
Right.
He's like, going by myself.
Right.
Well, normally if I'm going for a purpose. So it really depends on the why. But what I have found, if you need a devotional that's really cheap, they have great devotionals that are really cheap. They're right up front now. They used to be go to the right, make a left, go down that long aisle, and then it's on
Where
an
the
end cap.
cards are. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it's not there anymore. So that's normally why I go. Or if I need a picture frame or a mirror or a picture.
Why not Walmart? I mean, out of curiosity, I would think that
Not
would be
the same
cheaper at Walmart.
quality.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Oh, quality.
Yeah.
No, you ain't
Okay.
going
See,
there. Or like if you do a lot of sports memorabilia like I have, I got jerseys. They sell the glass frames, the stuff for football helmets. Like you can get everything from Hobby Lobby.
yeah,
You
you're
just gotta
gonna
know.
You're going to love Hobby Lobby even more after listening to this episode. So we actually have the founder and CEO who did an interview with us, David Green, and this dude is I don't think, sir, you would mind me saying he's getting up there. He's an older guy, and what a man of conviction. I mean, solid priorities, kingdom living. I mean, talk about love God and love people. He gives 50% of Hobby Lobby's earnings away.
And everything at Hobby Lobby's
50%.
cheap.
Right. It's normally
It's 50% off.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, so this guy lives it, and listeners, were joined with Bill High. You'll learn who he is. He also co-wrote this book that we're going to be talking about, and Jack the Greater joined me. So this podcast on our end would sound smart. You know, I needed Jack there. But I do want to read a comment about this book. The endorsement on the back of the book. One of them is by Sheila Walsh, author and TV host. I thought it put well this summary. I believe that every human being wants to live a life that matters, but our world offers temporary solutions to silence our God-given ache. I used to try to quiet that cry I felt inside, but now I embrace it as sacred space, a place and a calling that only God can fill. You too can live a legacy life. You were made for more. So it's just so neat what listeners are going to hear, how he sees running the business in the context of people. I mean, it really is so unorthodox from a business mindset. You'd be like, you're crazy. You shouldn't do things like that, such as, and you knew this, I guess y'all know this, but they're closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I asked him, did you guys get that from Chick-fil-A or did they get that from you? And he seems to think that both of them made the decision such a long time ago that they didn't influence each other at all. But Hobby Lobby used to be open on Sundays, so it was something that they implemented later. But are you guys Hobby Lobby fans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half of the stuff in my house is probably from Hobby Lobby.
Same.
Every picture
Yeah.
frame.
I think same.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into some money talk and kind of want to get personal with you guys as far as we know that the love of it is the root of all kinds of evil. The love of it is no good at all, but we also understand that money can be good if used in the right way. But how good are you guys with seeing money from an eternal mindset?
I mean, that's the only reason we work here.
Mm.
I mean, I can speak for everybody on staff, from Greg to us. They could be making more money doing exactly what they're doing someplace else. So anytime I do anything, it's not because I'm worried about the money that I'm getting here. It's the people that I help hopefully get to heaven and the reward that I'll receive when I get there.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if we're just talking dollars, I could quit right now and go get a job at McDonald's and make more money just because of the background I have. I'm sure y'all could get jobs in your fields just as easy doing the same.
Yeah. You would have to manage a McDonald's though, right? To make that.
It would be a lot less stress. Because then you're only dealing with people, 20 seconds at a time versus actually having to listen to them and deal with problems.
And walk with them.
And walk with
The
them.
long haul.
Yeah. How about you two? How do y'all? I'll get into it in a second. I mean, I would say the vast majority of my adult life, this has been one of my major struggles. And obviously this guy's coming from the angle of how to honor God with billions of dollars. I think our perspective would be more, how do we honor God with our contentment of life and making sacrifices and maybe not making as much money as we would like or having certain things. I would say for most of my adult life, if our finances they were always in order because I'm a big time budgeter and planner, but if our finances had excess and margin and I could see a little nest egg, and especially if we're in a season where we can give more, that would directly influence my happiness, my peace, and my contentment. if things went awry and we're in a place where, unexpected bills, or, oh my gosh, we just depleted our emergency fund, it would affect my well-being as far as how I see life and my mood and all that. And I'd say probably up until maybe 3 years ago, maybe it was a huge struggle where I'm finally in a season where it's like I had to form new neural pathways. I had to say, okay, wait a second. I know the facts. Money does not bring happiness. I can have joy, contentment, and peace, and it's completely disattached from money. And I know that as truth, but then it was like I had to take that truth and apply that to my actual life and say that is, and seriously, you hear therapists talk about forming neural pathways, and that's exactly what happened. I used to think about money in stressful times and get like a wave of anxiety, where now I think of, if we're in a stressful time financially, I don't get that reaction anymore, because it's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with my life. And when it comes to contentment and joy and my relationship with God and my relationship with family, and we know what the most important things are in life. It's not money, but that's a little snapshot of me. How about you guys?
I would say it's a journey for me. I wouldn't say that I am great at it, because I'm always being challenged with the relationship that I have with money. And I think now, looking back over the past 10 years, I would say that I am more generous than I was before. But I wouldn't say I'm as generous as I could be. And so even the shift from generosity isn't just in the margin. Like it used to be, I want to get to a place where I'm stewarding my finances and I have margin, and then I can give. And the Dave Ramsey, live and give like no one else. Oh, yeah. And so it was like, I want to get to that point. And then it was like, what if God asked me, am I open to him asking me to give beyond margin? And so even a few weeks ago, we were doing a photo shoot for our Sisterhood magazine. All the writing contributors were having their photos taken. And one of the women showed up and her grandson was with her, and he is like 4. And I went to go get the photographer and came back, and I just met him. Mm-hmm. And she's like, he wants to give you something. And so I bent down, and he took 2 pennies out of his pocket, and he gave me 2 pennies. And she said that every time they leave home, he grabs 5 pennies from his little piggy bank, so that he can, because he might want to give them to somebody
that is so
as he goes. And so it's like, even the thought of like a 4-year-old is intentional about who I might give my money away today. Who am I going to want to give it to? And I'm like, I have never had the thought leaving my house, like, I've got $20 in my purse today. God, who am I giving this to? And that being like, every time I leave my house, I'm thinking, who am I giving to? And so I would say I have a kingdom perspective in tithes and offering. I have a kingdom perspective in like asking, if I'm going to do I make this purchase? Is this purchase honoring to you, Lord? I feel like I've gotten there, but now I'm starting to feel like that is like the baseline. Like this is the baseline. Now, what does it look like to just always think, with every penny, mm-hmm. How does he want me to spend it? How does he want me to give it? So I don't think I've even grasped fully, like, what is a kingdom mindset with my finances.
Mm-hmm. And do you walk through journeys like what you just articulated? I would say, like, in your current journey, are you able to navigate this without a hint of condemnation or feeling bad about yourself? Like, you're thinking, that's the baseline. There's room for even more generosity. Can you have those thoughts and not put yourself in the hot seat?
Yeah, and I think it's because of my journey with money, because I see what the Lord has done. And so I'm like, he's kind to me, because I used to be a mess with how I spent my money, what I did. I mean, like, I was a mess. And so he has been so kind and gracious. So even when I like that little boy, like him doing that was a moment where the Holy Spirit spoke to me and was like, hey, what if you had this perspective? So it's never a like, oh, what have I been doing with my life? It's okay, now we've gotten here. It's time for us to move to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
In my 20s, I held money so tightly and so selfishly. My family did not have a lot growing up. My dad worked really hard so that my mom could be with us for most of my childhood at home. And so they made the sacrifices for that. And so we just didn't have stuff. And it was okay because we understood, but it was like all those expensive things that everybody else is getting, we can't afford that. And we were totally okay with that. But I think it instilled this thing in me to when I got that first big kid job and was getting that paycheck, it was like, this is my money. And now I can buy stuff and I can do what I want to. And it's mine. And I worked really hard for this. And so I don't think there were bad intentions around that selfishness, but I definitely think my perspective was, I worked for this money. I worked really hard for this money. It's mine, right? And I'm going to do with it what I want to. I'm also single, and so I've only ever had to provide for myself. So it really is my money, or that was my thinking in my 20s. And I think you, Lynn, talking about that generosity thing, it's the generosity part that has begun to change my mindset of money. It's the ability to give and to share with others, to support other people, to support our church. That has shifted my perspective on that it's actually not my money. I worked really hard for it, but it's because God has given me this job and this opportunity, and the things that I hold in my hands are because of him. And so I think it is something that I had again, not selfish in the way of wrong intent, but just selfish in the mindset of, for the first time, I had things that I had never had before. And so I just had to restructure my own perspective of money.
Yeah.
And that's good. Because, like, when you work for the church, we are definitely paid enough to survive.
Yeah.
But you don't have that worldly overflow.
Right.
But it's the whole James 1:17, all good blessings come from God. So, like, although I took a tremendous pay cut to start working for the church, and I still don't make what I was making way back in 2013. I have never been able to do as much with as little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my focus ain't on, I need to work 12 more hours. It's, all right, God's going to show up because he has proven to be faithful.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less stressful when you know what? I'm not going to have it. So God, if you want me to have it, make it happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, my kid's in private school. I ain't got it, but he made it happen. She's on an elite travel team. I ain't got it, but he made it happen. I adopted a child. I ain't got it, but he made it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good, man. Are you appreciative of your childhood, of how you articulated it? Like you weren't able to have all the things that you wanted. And because I think we could probably all see, like, for example, my household, my kids for sure can look at their peers, some of their peers, and be like, gosh, that must be nice to have a brand new car they can drive to school. But they can also look the other way and be like, I can't believe some people live like this right in our hometown. We're so lucky and fortunate. I sometimes, as a parent, you have that inclination of, I just want my kids to have the best. But then deep down inside, what are we teaching our kids if they could have everything?
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious how you reflect on your childhood.
Well, and I think too, we never went without. Like, we had everything we needed, right? And we knew that my dad was working really hard for our family so that my mom could be present for, like, he was honoring us and her with that, and that was the sacrifice that they were making for her to be able to be that in our lives. And so, I think we just grew up tremendously grateful, and we were just always taught to be grateful for the things that we have. We didn't know any different, of course. If I wanted to play with really cool toys, my friend, somebody in my neighborhood was going to have it. So I would just go, hang with them for a while if I really wanted to. But we never went without. We just didn't have the extra stuff. But I think that unfortunately instilled a mindset and a struggle within me later when I finally had adult money and money that was mine and I didn't have to answer for it. And I still, even at 36, struggle with this sometimes of like, I really want this thing. I don't need it, but I want it. And I can buy it, so why not, And that's not the right answer most of the time. And so I still struggle with that a little bit. But I think it turned into that as an adult. It became like, well, now I can't afford that thing that I really want. I could go buy that thing that I really want. But do I need it? No. Just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for the way that I grew up, in that my parents were modeling for us that this is the way that things are because of the sacrifices that we're making. And it wasn't to guilt us or make us feel a certain type of way. It was just to help us understand that this is why life looked like this. And they worked really hard, and we saw that. They worked so hard for the things that we had.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so before we transition, and this is kind of a hot topic just to dip our toe in, but college debt forgiveness.
I can't wait to hear what you guys think.
I don't know about college debt forgiveness, if I'm being honest, which I'm always wanting to strive to be honest. I guess it depends, and I will say the caveat is I don't know enough about it to know like what the parameters around it are, and so I'm purely speaking from if everybody gets it. I don't know what the parameters are, but I feel like at some point in life we have to be responsible for what we step into, and there are generations of people who didn't have their debt forgiven. I think, I don't know. I struggle with that because I'm like, if you stepped into something and you knew this was the cost of it, why do you get it forgiven? But if everybody's getting it forgiven, okay. I just wonder on the other side, what's the economic impact of that?
Right.
Like, is it affecting the institutions where, nothing's free. Somebody's paying for it somewhere. So who's paying for that forgiveness, and how does that impact the economy somewhere else? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't know where that saying came from, but my mama would always say it, And so that is where I'm at. I'm like, I don't understand enough about it to know if it's a blanket, everybody gets it, but I am like, somebody's paying for something. So where is that going? And, I made a lot of bad decisions when I was 18. Mm-hmm. But I paid for them. Right. And so at some point you have to pay for the decisions that you make, and you learn not to make them again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I read about students or kids who actually decide against going to college because they're like, I don't want to accrue all that debt.
Yeah.
And then they see people who made the opposite decision, and they're like, oh, you could have just gotten it completely forgiven. I'll say that I used to think it was, my first reaction was completely unfair. That's ridiculous. Everybody just needs to pay what they were committed to pay, and they received something, college education. And then Matthew 20, the whole workers in the field, the people that were hired, I don't know if I have the numbers right, but they work 8 hours, and then they're given what they were agreed to get paid. And then they see people who were hired for the last hour get paid the same thing. And I thought, gosh, that verse, it sounds like we should just be happy with grace given and people being the recipient of lavish love and forgiveness. But then I thought, but wait a second, in Matthew 20, there was an agreed upon amount. The people that committed to working a whole day. They were told what they were going to be given. The people that were working just for that hour, they were told that also. And none of that was undone. The commitment that was made, that's what was followed through with. So I was like, no, I don't think that's a good example. So I would be more with you as far as that.
And the other question with that is it was the amount that was being paid is by the owner of the land. And so are the universities okay with debt forgiveness or is it being forced upon them?
Right.
So that's a little bit different.
Well, I would imagine, I'm with you as far as I don't know how it all works, but I would imagine isn't the government paying off these debts, or they're just making it magically disappear?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, where's the government's money come from?
I wonder where.
You know what? I got it. I can fix it. You ready for this?
You got a solution to this mess?
Everyone will agree. If there's anybody who deserves their student loans forgiven, it's school teachers. They ain't making no money. So if they agree and they work, put a term on it. 10 years in the public school system or whatever it is, gone. I'd say the same thing if it was a doctor or someone that was working in like a state hospital where they were serving the underserved. If you're going to commit to be here, fine, wash it away. But for everybody else, like
military service.
Right.
Okay.
Like, ain't nobody going to question someone who's willing to give their lives for you to be able to have the freedoms you have going to school for free. No, they deserve that. They go out and put their lives on the line every day. Police officers, I put them in there too. Firemen, anyone who does a true public service, especially those who don't have big salaries.
Yep.
Like when you're getting out and you're doctor blah, 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 and you have your own private practice and you're making $69,000 a month, it's hard for me to see you get your student loans forgiven because you could probably afford it. And that's nothing against them. Like, get your money. I'm just saying, if you can afford it, then do it. If you can't, then that's a whole nother story.
Copeland, 2028.
I'm telling you, you got my vote.
I get us out of debt, though. I can get us out of debt. I have us out of debt in 2 years and had the most people mad at me. I would have so many people mad at me, they wouldn't even remember who Trump was. I said it. But we'd be out of debt. We would be out of debt.
What about organic corn farmers? Should they have their college debt?
Not on my watch. Not on my watch.
You're like, that's the
Not
last
under
on the
my
list.
administration.
All right, y'all, is David Green. It is honestly an honor to have him on the podcast. What a great man and a legacy that he's leaving, and he wrote all about it in this book. So you're going to hear all about it. Thank you, guys. Well, it is an honor. I'm going to introduce Jack here in a second, but huge honor for our listenership and viewers on YouTube. We have the founder of Hobby Lobby, and people know the magnitude of Hobby Lobby, but it employs 50,000 people, 1,000 stores in 48 states, grosses nearly $8 billion a year. You're the author of a leadership book and a leader's devotional, and then received the World Changer Award and the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. But most importantly, we would all agree, your wife, Barbara, and their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you have those numbers? You have kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids, or have you lost track, sir?
No, I think it's 48 and counting. So I always say counting. So it may be 49. So they're adopting. We've adopted from several countries. So we got a pretty good sized family. And by the way, they all live here in Oklahoma City area.
Oh, wait, you were not making a joke.
No, that's not
40.
a joke.
Oh, my gosh, that is a lot.
No.
Oh, man. Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah, 18 grandkids. Great-grands. I'm sorry, great-grands. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. Well, Jack Hoey here, he's been a mentor of mine ever since I got to know him as my boss for a few years here at Seacoast. He came on staff to help us navigate a season of immense growth. And when I first met him, he was a business leader in the community, had a prominent local company, chairman, he chaired the board of our church, Seacoast. And you started at Seacoast 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
As far as coming on staff.
Yeah, 2010.
And then that you ended that in 2019, I'm pretty
Right.
sure. Yep. But an icebreaker question I'd love to ask all three of you. And before you answer, Bill, why don't you tell people who you are? But my question is, I would imagine that we all believe that God has a huge role in our life's trajectory. We're trusting him and following him the best of our ability. So we get that. But when it comes to business in the purest sense, how much luck is involved and how much strategy is involved? And I'll put it this way. Could there be someone, Mr. David, who had the same strategies, same mentality, same approach, did all the right things like you did, and yet we never heard about that company because there was some luck that they did not inherit that maybe you did? So I want to ask all three of y'all that. When it comes to successful businesses, how does luck play into it? Anybody can go first.
David, are you going to go first?
I'll go first, but I have never even thought of the word luck. I've never even given it a thought. So luck to me has nothing to do, whether I'm right or wrong, but nothing to do with what's happened to Hobby Lobby.
Yes, sir.
Now, I think God gives us all talents. So some of us, even without God, with our talents, we can accomplish a lot. But I think with God, with the talent he's given us, we can take it to a whole nother level. So I think walking with him every day, the Bible says you have not because you ask not. So we ask every day. So I find myself into areas that I'm surprised because I know I've asked God to lead me into areas that can make this company much greater. So I think we've all got our talents. God has given them to us, but with him, we can do much greater things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'd agree with that. Although, it's also in the Bible that time and chance happens to them all. The race doesn't always go to the swift. The wisest person doesn't always prevail. But I've never felt that either strategy or luck were the most important thing. It's do you have a robust idea as in a business, and then what's your perseverance like? Because everybody's going to experience failure along the way. It's you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to make bad decisions, and the question is then what do you do with that? And I think David, one of the things I've always felt is that one of the advantages that a person of strong faith has in a leadership role is the pressure is off. What they need to do is be faithful. And if they're faithful with what God's entrusted to them, then the results that come about that's really his business. And that's very freeing.
What you think, Bill? Yeah. And why don't you tell people who you are?
Yeah, I'm the CEO of Legacy Stone. So we're a ministry to families, helping them think differently about family. Our goal is to change the trajectory of family around the globe to a biblical worldview. So in that regard, we develop small group curriculum for the church, but I've also had the opportunity to work alongside David. We've written 3 books together, the most recent one, this being The Legacy Life. David and I have hosted leadership events for CEOs from around the country. We've been doing that about 20 years. And so from my vantage point, to answer your question, I do get to do a lot of family business consulting. And I've definitely seen CEOs that step into businesses and it seems like equal talent, equal intelligence, and one succeeds and another does not. And some of that, I think, just boils down to, are they good stewards? And will they steward what God has given them well? And sometimes we don't know the answers to that until heaven. As you know, sometimes you'll see people that will achieve great success, and once they get there, they become different people, and God knows that story in advance. So we'll leave that part up to Him.
Yeah, this is great. This is going to be so much fun. Yeah, the Legacy Life, and is October the 14th still the target release date? Is that still on track?
October 14th is when it's coming out, and it actually comes with a 90-day devotional that people can order as a companion to the book as well.
Yeah. Well, Mr. David, would you be so kind and and you can go into as much or as little as you want, but just a snapshot of the Hobby Lobby story, and just what was the first thought that came to your mind? What goals were you setting out? I'd love to hear the humble beginnings and just a little bit of the story.
Okay, my background's working for TGNY, so I was a supervisor for TGNY, and I worked for them for 13 years. But in that time, a lot of people, I'm not going to say everybody, wants to do something on their own. So I decided, hey, what I would do, because in Hobby Lobby, we had these real small craft departments, really, really small. And I said, if you do this right, it might be better. So I didn't know how to get the money to open a store because it took all the money we had for our 3 children. So I borrowed $300 from the bank. And so that wouldn't open a store. So we started making little frames in our garage. So in 1970, we started with $600 making frames in our garage, selling them to Ma and Pa stores. In 1972, 2 years later, we opened our first store.
Wow.
And our first store was in Oklahoma City, and it was about the size of a living room. So in 1972, our first store, and we did $37,000 from October to December. That was it. That was more money than that wasn't enough for our payroll. But anyway, that's how we got started.
Wow.
But we kept selling those frames, and of course, that's how we got started with the $600 borrow from the bank. And then it's kind of gone from there. So today we have over 1,000 stores in 48 states. We do about $8 billion. We'll do more than $8 billion this year, and we have about 50,000 employees. And we own the company. It's not like these stores are franchised.
Yeah. So you guys have written books together before. How did the idea for this particular book come about? Whose idea was it?
It's a lot of prodding by Bill. Are we supposed to tell the truth?
I love it. Well, let's let the readers know how. I'll ask it this way. How would you like for this book to affect readers? So basically, thematically, and I'm going to use some of the emboldened words in your marketing material, and I think this may nail it, but I want you to feel free to elaborate. But legacy isn't what we leave behind, but what we set in motion. This book challenges readers to understand their role in God's redemptive story that extends far beyond their individual lifetime.
Yeah, that's it. And I'll jump in on this one since David started picking on me. We've done this a lot. So he usually picks on me because I'm a lawyer and he likes to tell lawyer jokes. But the short of it is David and I did a book really because of all these CEO events. So over the years, people would come into Hobby Lobby and they, as we did these events, and they'd hear the story of this company that's not open on Sunday, only open till 8 as a retailer, gives away half of its profit, pays the highest minimum wage, and they do all these things that don't make sense, and yet it works. And so that led to the last book, which is called Leadership Not by the Book. And one of the chapters in that book is a chapter that says build for 150 years. Now, that is contrary to the traditional business mindset, is that we build something to sell it. And this idea of build for generations was a topic that led to people saying, now that's an interesting thought, write about that. So that's the most recent book, The Legacy Life. How do you lead your family to make a difference for eternity? And you nailed it, is the theme of the book really is that too much of us, we think about legacies, what you leave behind, and we say, no, legacy is what you're setting in motion for that day in heaven. We're looking forward to that day in heaven. So David talks about the idea how he changed his initial goals. It was, have a great marriage, raise great kids, and be successful in his career. But now it's how does he think about the next future generations, and how do they steward what God's given them, whether it's for the next 100 years or 200 years, as long as Jesus tarries. So that we're definitely trying to cause people to think differently about their family, about their businesses, about their life, and at the same time provide some practical instruction on how to get there.
Wow. And so this is, I mean, doing some digging in the book, I know the answer to this question, but it has very general application to any and everybody, not just people who are business minded. I mean, this is deep life conviction stuff.
It's a broad market. Certainly that was the goal, is to write to every single family and say, if you do these things, you got a greater chance of success from generation to generation.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. David, can you tell us some of these principles, maybe just a few off the top of your head, that people would find in the book?
Well, I think the main thing that I believe is the fact that we need to have our children. We need to first have a great marriage, and we need to have great children. We really need to be more intentional with our marriage and our family, because that's where we leave a legacy, is with our kids and our grandkids and our great grandkids, of which I've already told you we've got, I think, 18. Maybe it'll be tomorrow, 19. But anyway, it does increase. But that's our legacy. First and foremost is our family. So I think we need to spend more time on that. We bring our co-managers in here about every other month, and we'll bring in 50 at a time. Co-managers are going to be our future managers. So we want them to know what our culture is. And when I spend a little time with them, because there's plenty of people to talk to them. But one of the things that I tell them is it's really easy sometimes for us to be successful at our job. And that's what we're focused on too much sometimes. But what we really need to be focused on is our family, our marriage. And I tell them that's more important than Hobby Lobby. That may not seem to be the right thing to say, but I think when you care about your family, you're going to care about your job. So that's true for all of us. We really need to know that more important than our job and what our job is that we have a marriage that God is pleased with and children that serve the Lord. And I think that's where we'll have legacy, is having children's children serving the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I have one more question I want to fit in before I give the steering wheel to Jack here. But this is kind of another question for everyone. So I'm speaking, I know how we all feel about the love of money is never a good thing. I mean, it's the root of all sorts of evil. But to be successful in business, you definitely have to be driven to make money. I'm asking that as a question. The love of money, never a good thing, but to be successful in business, there is a drive to make and expand your income.
Well, that's not a hard question, because I think why do you want that money becomes the real reason. What do you want? Do you want more stuff and more stuff and more stuff and more stuff? Or do you want to have something to be able to tell more people about Jesus? So our motivation to add more stores, to make more money, to be the very best we can, is to make as much money as we can to tell people about the good news of Jesus. And that's what we do with it. We give half of our earnings to tell people about Jesus. And so I think there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you have a good purpose and not just so you have more stuff. Yeah. And that's where we're kind of, we just need a bigger house and a bigger boat and more cars. And I think that's not exactly where God would have us to be.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, one of the things that you touched on earlier, David, or I think maybe Bill was actually framing this, was, if business is just about money, what a dead-end thing that is. I mean, yes, the family is should be, I think, the center of each of our lives. But your time in the workplace, is it a supportive environment? Are you treating people well? Is it a culture that honors God? Are you selling things that are good products? I mean, are you selling things that when a family purchases and they do, there's something positive for the family, so in that sense, business, I've always felt if all it is about money, that's a dead thing, and you're unlikely to be successful. because that's not inspiring to anybody. But if it's about doing something beautiful and something that enriches life, and you're enriching the life of your coworkers as you work through it together, that's a powerful thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to Jack as we were prepping for this conversation, and just and this is coming from a believer's perspective, but just the peace that has to come to someone that's in business. And I've actually seen someone flip the switch. They give their heart over to the Lord and they realize, wow, I can make a lot of money, but what does that even mean? And just the peace of knowing, hey, at the end of the day, and I've heard it said this way, I'm trying to use money for people instead of using people to make more money. And at the end of the day, that's just got to be such a deeply rooted peace. Mr. David, did you always have that? Or was there ever a time when you had to self-correct in your head? Like, oh, shoot, I was just prioritizing money here for a second. That's not what it's all about. Like, are there ever times where you have to self-correct in your head?
Well, there was a time, and that was when, and by the way, it should have been early on because I'm a preacher's son, but I didn't get it. Okay? It was like, I got to make more money. And of course, but what corrected it was knowing what to do with this amount of money that could ruin my family, literally ruin my family. And I knew it could, and it was very, very worrisome. It was one of the worst days of my life. And I would ask people that have written books, that are Christian, what I do with it. And they would say, you give it to your kids and they give it to their kids. And I just couldn't live with that. So it was in the backyard when it all happened to me. In the backyard, the Lord asked me, said, what would you do with Hobby Lobby if the Jones family owned it? Now, I said he owned it, and that's what we Christians say, but he really didn't own it. Because if I'm going to do what I want to do with it, then it's not his. So from that day on, we became stewards and not owners. Now, that should be something we should have done early on, because the Bible tells us that he owns everything. So now you're talking about peace. You have peace when you don't own it. You're only the steward of what God has given you. And that's kind of and that is where we are today. And that's why I make less than I made 25 years ago, because it's not mine. Now, I could if I wanted to. I don't need more stuff to make me happy. I'm more satisfied with telling more people about the person that loves them and died for them.
Yeah, I want to jump in here too and just echo what David said. This principle is what David certainly talks a lot about, which is this idea of ownership versus stewardship. And that principle applies to every single one of us, whether you've got a company making $8 billion or you're a factory worker on the line cutting an hourly wage. We all have to recognize that we're stewards, and we have to steward whatever God's put in our hands. And when we are faithful with what he puts in our hands, that's the point in time that we're the most content, the most satisfied, the most joyful, and frankly, the most generous. It's all relative. So we certainly hope, by the way, that whatever people do, if they read this book, they'll recognize that all these principles apply to me. And the ownership versus stewardship principle applies to me right now.
Yeah.
I tell you what, both of you guys, but I'll just admit the last answer you gave, Mr. David, I got a little choked up. Just very, very inspiring stuff. Thank y'all both. Jack, why don't you give them some questions here?
Yeah. Well, just first a response, I want to echo what Joe was saying. Jesus said, those who would save their life will lose it. Those who would lose their life for my sake and for the gospel will find it. And that's the truth. We all want to live fulfilled lives, and yet if what you're seeking is fulfillment, you will not find it. But giving your life away, Jesus, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. I mean, that's the path. Well, thank you. I had several questions that kind of go in some different directions, and one of the things that you've alluded to earlier, the idea that this legacy life that you're advocating in your book is something that applies to every family. So I'm sure that with the speaking opportunities that you've had, you've met a lot of people with whose gifts and whose circumstances have shaped legacies that have looked in very different ways. And I wonder if as I just say that, are there any particular legacy stories that you've heard that come to mind that can it help our listeners get a broader feel for what this can look like?
Bill, I'm going to give you that one.
You're going to let me go first on this one? Well, there's a whole chapter, a couple chapters in the book about biblical legacies and certainly stories of families in real life. And in the U.S., of course, one of the most famous stories is the Vanderbilt family. At one point in time, they were the wealthiest family in the world. And they, in 3 generations, basically lost the entire family fortune. By 4th generation, they still thought they had money, but they were basically broke. And they're one of the classic stories of a family that just did not make it. They blew the greatest fortune ever in the history of the world in a matter of a handful of generations. Not a great story. And, as we've done these events with David, we've had families that come up to us and they tell us some of the sometimes great horror stories of, how they're fighting with one another. One family came up to us and they had 47 lawsuits in between family members, just among 2 generations. So it's incredible. But we don't hear the stories of some of the really great stories, and some of them, frankly, are in the Bible. We tend to not think there's a lot of great stories of families in the Bible, but one of the chapters references the Rechabite family. And you can trace the Rechabite family from the time of the Kings into the book of Jeremiah and as late as 1864. So something like 2,300 years of a family that sticks together, stays together. David's family, by the way, is 6 generations now. We can go back at least, we know, of a couple generations of faith prior to David, and now we're into the 4th generation of the family. And I think that, again, is one of the things that we want to try to draw out, is there are some families that are successful and they think in generations. Around the world, if you go into Europe, you'll see families that are now into 100 years or more of the family continuing the same set of values. And again, that was some of the motivation, is to cause people to think a little longer term.
David, anything you'd add? Any stories that come to mind that?
No, I think the way I'm thinking about my mother and dad that had small churches, just really small churches. Probably my dad was a pastor and probably never pastored one over 100, yet their children became pastors. So when I'm thinking about legacy, I'm thinking about everybody that comes to know Christ. That's your legacy. And if someone comes to know Christ and they tell someone, you really don't know what your legacy is when you tell people about Jesus, because that is eternity. That is legacy. That is forever. This world is nothing but a vapor. So when you affect someone's life for the Lord, Hobby Lobby's been able to give 1.5 billion, not million, children the gospel. That is our legacy. But someone else that may not have done that may have told one person about legacy. My mother lived a very, very humble life, but she has children. And so all of the people that have come to know Jesus have legacy for eternity. So I see legacy in view of eternity and telling people the greatest story that's ever been told. So that's just how I view legacy, and how that I want to be part of telling others about the good news about Jesus.
Yeah. Well, that's well said. It brings to mind the passage in Matthew 24, which also relates to your concept of stewardship. Jesus says, "Who's the faithful and wise manager whom the master has put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns." And the thing that brings to mind for me is the master has determined what the steward's scope is. He's responsible to give food for a specific group of people. And, part of the task then is, okay, Lord, who have you entrusted to me? And, our families first, but, Joey and I have, worked with this ministry here at Seacoast, and the founding pastor, Greg Surratt, God's used him in a wonderful way, and a church that's, reaching, 15,000 people each week. I have some other friends who are spent 40 years in a ministry to a kind of a small, obscure, I'll call it a subculture in our country. They've lived in poverty all their lives because they've been serving in this ministry that doesn't have any resources to provide. And I'll tell you though, when I think about the statement that when we stand before God, many who are last will be first, I think about them. And I've sometimes wondered, why did God give them? They're brilliant, talented, diligent people, godly people. Why did he put them in this small, obscure ministry? And my thought is because he could trust them to do it. There are plenty of people who will glad to stand on the big platform, glad to go where there are big rewards. But those who are willing to serve without that reward in this life, those servants are rare.
David, this might be a good place for you to talk about how you view the people that God's put in your charge and the responsibility there, even over and above missions.
And I want to say real quick before did you guys say that what was the stat as far as the minimum wage at Hobby Lobby? Because that goes with this question. I just want y'all to restate that because that was interesting.
It's $19.50, wow. And it's going to go to over $20. And I've got a couple of employees here, but they didn't hear me say that. And then a couple might. So, I think at one time the Lord just said, I'm putting these people in your charge. So that's very, very important that they're taken care of the way they ought to be taken care of based on the responsibilities and those in that matter. So I think that's one of the responsibilities that we have is to take care of those that have really gotten us and brought us to where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say that in the Hobby Lobby culture is like I think of in churches, for instance, it's our aim is to not only get the gospel out to more people, but also to take care of each other, love each other. How would it play out? I mean, because obviously Hobby Lobby has gotten so big, it's not like you can know everybody that works there, but are there certain principles and convictions that are taught to employees, such as treating other people how you want to be treated? This is a non-negotiable. Are there certain things like that you make a requirement because they're deeply rooted convictions that are coming from, Jesus's wonderful teachings?
Yeah, I think we try to first set an example. We tell people the
sir.
worst tool you can get out of the tool chest is one of authority. So it's the one that we don't want to try to use. But going back to giving, we obviously have a lot of money that God allows us to give. And I think that touches a little bit on what you were talking about a while ago. And now, where do you put it? You have someone over here that's in a mission field and sees a few people come to know Christ. You think about the museum. If you look at the museum and the amount of monies that God asked us to put in that, and you see the number of people, then you say that comes to know the Lord. Yet we're over here with some evangelists. We're seeing millions of people come to the Lord. But I think what we have to do is just follow up what God would have us to do.
Yeah.
So the board is coming together and say, where would God have us to go? And someplace it may not be where you would go because you're only interested in return on investment. I've put so many dollars out and I get so much. But I don't think we can see it that way. I think we have to see it when we're looking in Europe, our evangelism is not the same as in other countries. So I think what you're doing and you're trying to do as someone that's investing God's money and being a good steward is finding out where he would have you go. So there's a lot of prayer that goes into that. I don't know that we always make the right decisions, but we really realize that you're not going to get the same return investment just following what God would have you to do.
I've got a question, David, that as I've been thinking about our upcoming conversation that it's come to mind. You, and by the way, I visited the Museum of the Bible in D.C. last month, And yeah, what an outstanding place. We can talk about that later. But so thank you for following God's leading to help bring that into being. But one of the things that you have done is you've made a transition in terms of your responsibilities. And the thing that I was reflecting on, I think this ties in with the sense of legacy in the sense that, as you've talked about, legacy is what you set in motion, but your vision extends beyond yourself. And there comes a time in every career setting where it's time to turn it over to the next generation. And that's part of the legacy process, is realizing that you've got a time allotted for your role, and there's someone coming after you, and your goal is to end well and enable them to succeed. What thoughts do you have about how do you know when it's time to move into a new season of life?
Well, when you're not doing as good as you did last year. So I work really, really hard to keep my job. Okay. So I'm 83. And by the way, I tell all my officers one thing. I say, if I need you, I don't need you. They know what I mean. If I need you, I don't need you. In other words, you have someone on the bench that can take your place. I have someone on the bench that can take my place. I don't think it's the right time. And God has blessed us. This year is much better than last. We've always grown. Not always. During COVID, we had some tough times. So I think that I'm not real excited about that word retire. I think you leave that up to the Lord. I think you need to retire to something, not from something. But I don't know that it's God's time for me to retire. But I have someone in place that would do as good, probably not better, okay? But
of course not.
But at least as good. So I think that it's important. But I don't know that God has an age that He wants you to move on and someone else takes the place. So I try real hard to be better tomorrow than I was today. And I think the way I do that is ask God to walk with me. And I think He gives me a lot of ideas that makes our company better every year. We're better every year, and it shows it up on the P&Ls.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I framed my question wrongly, because I know that this idea of not retiring from something, but retiring to something, that's a key concept for you. And I agree with that. I was going to say, but my 90-year-old mother works full-time at her church, and doesn't really want to hear from her children about she needs to slow down. And, she's doing what is powerfully meaningful to her, and she's having a great impact. And talk about a rich legacy, right? As her children and grandchildren and great grandchildren observe that. But she hasn't always done this. She's had different seasons in her life. What do you have any thoughts on that? On, how do you know when it's time to retire to something new?
I think I will know. I think we will know. I think that's where we just walk with Him every day, and I think He lets us know. So in my case, I'm doing more of things like this, and I'm doing less of working with Hobby Lobby, but I'm still the CEO. And I don't know that God has asked me to release that positions at this time, although I know that there's someone that can take my place. In every job we have, no matter whether it's the warehouse or the legal, we have someone in place to take we've just had two of our leaders that's been with me for over 30 years that have left us, and there was someone to take their place. So I think that's real important for us to have someone in place if we're not there. And so we have done that.
Yeah, if I can, let me jump into this conversation too, just to add on to a little bit to what David's saying. We typically say there are at least 4 types of founders. One is a monarch, and they will live and work and they'll die in office. Nothing wrong with being a monarch, just as long as we know who the next person is. So you think about the queen, and we knew who was next. But another type of founder is the governor. The governor is somebody that they serve in office, but they have other interests, and they're ready to go on to something else, which is what David's talking about, is you retire to something. And again, it's a good position, just as long as we know where we're going and who's taking our place. A fourth or third type of founder is a general. Now, the generals can be a little tricky because sometimes think about General Patton, they'll step in and they'll try to give something over, but they wait for their successor to fail. That's not the best model. It can work just as long as they don't take over the reins just because there's a mistake. And then the fourth type of founder is an ambassador. And they step out and they continue to champion the cause, much like Greg has done for you all. But Greg's also got a bit of a governor aspect to him because he's had some other interests. So anyway, those are the types of founders, and each kind of have a different way. But the key is what David's talking about is who's next? Who's going to be on the bench to take my place?
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Good. Let me ask you this: we've talked a lot about family, and you've got a large and rapidly growing extended family, David. Are there practices that your family has found helpful to help you stay connected and to help ensure that the legacy that you've sought to instill in your children, you have a chance to also see it in your grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Bill got our family to do is come together with a vision, mission, and values. And that's a hard copy that we put together. Gen 1 and Gen 2 spent a lot of time putting it together. Then we gave it to Gen 3 and asked them if they could accept it. So I think that's a big part of why our family has stayed together. But I think that has been real important. So the first Saturday of every year, we have a big celebration. We come together, and this is who we are. So we know who we are. It's written down. Now, it all comes from God's word because it needs to, because if it's my word or someone else, it just doesn't work. But we do have a mission, a vision, and this is our values. So I think that's been one of the keys. I think there's a lot of keys, and one of the other keys would just be intentional about your marriage. Be intentional about your children. They're more important than your job. And this is what we tell our management people. There's something more important than Hobby Lobby, and that is your family, your marriage, your children. So I want us to be, and our people to be, intentional about their family. So that is very important. And being intentional, I think, getting us to do that, because there's a lot of clutter going around here, a lot that can take our kids' attention away from it. We've got to bring it back and figure out how, have God to help us. How can we be more of an influence to our children than the world?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me add on, just because I've been a good observer here over the years. So they do have a clear family vision, mission, values. And they do have this annual family celebration where they review vision, mission, values. So it doesn't get mixed up with Christmas or Easter. It is a designated time where they can welcome in new family members. And those new family members may receive a one-of-a-kind family Bible. They may receive a family coin that has those vision, mission, values. And then on top of that annual family celebration, they do a quarterly birthday luncheon where they celebrate and affirm individuals. And then additionally, they meet monthly. So they have a regular family meeting where they talk about giving. And we always say that giving is the easiest way to talk about family values.
Mm-hmm.
So that's every single month. So those are some practices that I've seen where David's done a really good job. He and Barbara have done a good job of keeping the family together.
So tell us more about the monthly meeting on giving. What I would assume you don't have the 6-month-olds in there. I mean, what's the age at which children, grandchildren, et cetera, start to attend?
Right now, the people that make the decisions are the people that earned it. The officers, you have to be an officer in the company.
Uh-huh.
And we don't have that many family members working for the company, by the way.
Uh-huh.
We believe that everybody ought to go where God asked them to go. So we don't encourage or discourage anybody from working for Hobby Lobby. They can be here if they want. So everybody that is on this committee, there's 7 of us, counting a nephew and a son-in-law, that is involved in what we believe the Bible says is in the multitude of counsel. So we don't want it to be about me or about one person. So we want this to carry on the same way that we're doing. And that is, we know what we're going to vote on before we vote on it. We have a list of it, and we need and we should and we do pray that God would lead us in that. And there's a lot for us to learn about just where the money should go, because there's a lot of places it shouldn't go, just as much as there should be a place it should go. So we want to be very careful. And so we do believe the word that says, in the multitude of counsel. Sometimes I say, I don't like my idea and I don't like yours, but I like ours. Our idea I like. And so far, our ideas, we very seldom look back and said, maybe we made a mistake here, because we've come together and we've tried to follow God's word and be a multitude of counsel in giving the money in the various departments or the various ministries we're involved with.
But David, Generation 3 sits in on that meeting, so you should mention that too.
Yes. Yeah, we let anybody that's 16 and older be attentive to that, but there's 7 of us that make the decision. So they can listen and learn. And then we've given a certain amount of money to Generation 3, which is a small amount of the total, that they distribute on their own, and they come together the same way Generation 1 and 2 does, coming together.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because that's what I was wondering. I think that's, 16 and older, whatever age you set, how do you communicate, the joy in what you're doing? How do you communicate the process that wisdom applies to making good decisions and enabling them to see that? That just sounds like a great practice.
I think there's an awful lot that we're learning and still learning about giving, because there's a lot of places you shouldn't give. Like, we also have an investment group that we come together and decide where we invest our money over and above what we make and give. And we never get involved with a lot of companies that's just starting. And we are kind of, I said kind of, almost 100%. We think the same way about ministers. If someone's got an idea, we're not excited about ideas. We're excited about people that's going to make that idea happen. And so we had one person come in here and they wanted X amount of dollars. They have this great idea. They're going to do ministry. And I said, no, we have no money for you. I want to see you crawl. Now, that may sound crazy, but I crawled. We crawled. I want to see someone crawl that I know that what they're interested in is telling people the good news about Jesus, their ministry that they're involved. I want to know that that's and God is going to take care of them. If that's where God wants you, He's going to take care of you. So we want to come in later when we know we have a person that is truly committed to that ministry. So there's a lot of places not to give money.
It just hit me how there seems like, on the outside looking in, because this is the only church I've been a part of now for over 20 years, but there seems to be churches that prioritize expansion and growth at the expense of prioritizing the ministry workers' family lives. I mean, I've heard horror stories, so it's like churches can learn from these principles of Hobby Lobby for sure.
I would tell you, my experience is that businesses tend to treat their people much better than ministries do. And I think the reason is, I was in the glass industry for a while, and I never would have told you that glass had the answer to all of life's problems. But in the ministry, we kind of believe that. And so what happens, though, is sometimes people are so focused on their mission that they're really oblivious to the cost they're extracting from the people that are working side by side with them. And that's not what I don't think that's how God frames our responsibility.
Yeah, I think we have a big responsibility when God gives us money to give. It's His. He gave it to us, and where to put it. So there's a lot of wrong things we have done, but we want to do less wrong things in the future.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much. This has been really, really awesome. So October 14th, I'm pretty sure you can go ahead and
pre-order.
I think it's pre-orderable, isn't it?
It's up. It's up on Amazon. The devotional's up, so people can go to Amazon. Of course, if they want to wait and go to Hobby Lobby, they can go buy it at Hobby Lobby too, or
Now
Mardel's.
you're getting there.
So.
Hey, I gotta close with asking this: was Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby influenced by the other in the decision to keep Sundays closed, or did those two things happen without you guys knowing?
I think that when we closed on Sunday, because we were open on Sunday, I don't recall thinking about Chick-fil-A. So they may have been closed. I don't know. I just knew that the Lord was kind of dealing with us that we needed not to be open on Sunday. So that's why we closed.
Gotcha. Well, thank y'all both. Congratulations on another book.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice meeting y'all.
Bye.
You've been watching Seacoast Church's Things You Won't Hear on Sunday podcast. You can now become a patron of this podcast and receive exclusive content. Your support goes towards Seacoast ministry efforts in local prisons. Also, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to this podcast so that you get these episodes as soon as they're released. All of this information can be found in the show notes. Thanks for watching.